Good to see everybody. My name is Eugene Hernandez, and welcome to the Crip Camp, a Disability Revolution panel discussion presented by Film at Lincoln Center and Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts. A special thanks to Netflix for making this event possible today. Welcome, and we're going to get started in just a moment. I'm going to make a few introductions and welcome our guests, and then hand it over to our moderator in just a moment. And I'm going to take my time through these introductions to give people a chance to arrive. I can see by the growing participant count on screen that folks are arriving now, and we'll give people a few minutes to continue arriving. So I will start by welcoming and making a few introductions. My name is Eugene Hernandez, and I am the director of the New York Film Festival and the deputy director of film at Lincoln Center. I'm sitting against a light-colored wall here in my bedroom, and I'm a Latino male wearing dark glasses, and feeling a little scruffy today because I haven't shaved, and happy to be here. We're going to wait a few more minutes before we begin to give everyone a chance to log into Zoom here and to access the live captioning. I want to let you know that you can click the closed caption button on the Zoom menu at the bottom of your screen. Laura Schechter from Total Caption will be our cart provider this evening. Our ASL interpreters, Lynette Taylor and Stephanie Fain, are listed in the panelist box with interpreter after their names. They will be taking turns doing ASL interpretation throughout the meeting. Lynette Taylor is a white woman with short brown hair, wearing wireframe glasses, sitting on a dark gray couch against a bare gray wall, while Stephanie Fain is a white woman with brown hair and brown glasses, wearing a blue turtleneck in front of a blue background screen. Visual descriptions are being provided throughout the event today to ensure accessibility for people who are blind or have low vision. Panelists and access workers will be visible on the screen. However, as this is a Zoom conversation, the participants will not. So during the Q&A at the end of our discussion, please ask your questions in the chat or raise your hand using Zoom, the Zoom functionality, and your mic and camera will be enabled for that question. Please note that this discussion is being recorded and will be shared by Film at Lincoln Center on its YouTube channel. If you choose to participate in the Q&A today, your likeness will be included in the recording. If you need anything not mentioned, or if you have any questions, if you have any technical issues during the workshop, you can send a chat to our host, Arin, and he will help you out. So please feel free to do that if needed. Okay, so as many of us probably know, July 26th marked the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. This month, Lincoln Center commemorates this anniversary through the ADA in the Arts program, including a video series of disabled artists, arts programs designed for people with disabilities, and awareness events like this one, exploring disability rights history and disability justice. To check out other offerings in this series, I invite you to please visit lincolncenter.org/ADA in the Arts. lincolncenter.org/ADA in the Arts to get more about this series and more about these programs. Film at Lincoln Center is really proud to be part of this special event today in celebration and recognition of the 30th anniversary of the historic ADA passage. Film at Lincoln Center continues to present free events, digital offerings, and screenings all year long. To check out the upcoming programs and video content, you can visit filmlink.org. That's filmlinc.org. So I'm pleased to introduce Wendy Liu, our moderator for today's discussion. Wendy is a national reporter and global speaker on disability in the media. She's based in New York City, and she's written for the New York Times, Teen Vogue, Bustle, Men's Health, Quartz, Columbia Journalism Review, among many others. As a journalist, she covers disability, race, politics, and culture with a focus on a wide range of social issues within disability communities, including topics like family, education, relationships, healthcare, and policy. Wendy, would you please introduce yourself and share your visual description? And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you to Lincoln Center for having us today, and thank you to Netflix as well. Like Eugene said, and thank you for that intro. My name is Wendy Liu. I am a Chinese woman wearing glasses, a tracheostomy tube, and a striped shirt. And I'm sitting against a white wall. It's a huge honor for me to be moderating this panel. I am so excited to be talking with Nicole and Jim today about their documentary Crip Camp and the Americans with Disabilities Act. I loved Crip Camp so much, made me as a disabled person myself appreciate just all of the work that activists have done for years to help me be able to live my life. I was born in 1992, so a couple of years after the ADA was passed. So thank you for making this documentary and for being here. So we can just dive right into the questions. My first question is, most Americans are taught civil rights in history class from a lens of race and ethnicity, but when it comes to disability rights, Section 504 and the ADA are not as widely known. And so why are the stories in Crip Camp so important to share? And why are the arts an important vehicle to tell this underrepresented history?
This is Jim LeBrecht. I am a 64-year-old white guy with black frame glasses. I've got a green goatee. I've got a blue shirt on, and I'm in my home office in Oakland, California. There's a red wall behind me with a couple of music posters on it. I'd like to, start answering your question by just saying that I think every culture needs to know its history. And I and certainly a number of other people with disabilities look upon disability as my culture, my background. Certainly we have multiple identities, all of us do, but for me, the one that I seem to be most passionate about is being someone with a disability. So I think it's important to know where you've come from, and it helps you guide how we should all move forward. So I think that we should be looking at disability history in classrooms. That the discussions need to go beyond some very, very rudimentary topics or one paragraph.
I'm Nicole Newnham, and I'm Jim's co-director and co-producer on Crip Camp. And I am a 50-year-old white woman with shoulder-length brownish hair and glasses, and I'm sitting in front of a yellow wall and some family photographs. And I think that this, issue that you raised, Wendy, was like definitely one of my key motivating factors in jumping into this project with Jim. It's just like Jim really, Jim is a kind of legendary sound designer and mixer in the documentary community, and I've had the good fortune to work with him for 15 years prior to us starting Crip Camp, which was a 5-year endeavor. So we've been friends for a long time, and over time, one of the things that Jim has gifted me is just like an awareness and knowledge of disability, community, and culture. And so when the story of Crip Camp presented itself, and it presented itself as like an opportunity to tell a really, really critical, undertold story out of history in a really cinematic, really universal, really entertaining manner through the lens of this, summer camp. And also, once we found the footage from the People's Video Theater, this like immersive way of telling the story, where the audience could hopefully feel like they went to Camp Gen Ed too. And they got to meet the people that Jim got to meet and have those kinds of experiences. Then it seemed like a really extraordinary opportunity to kind of show the history, basically shift audience perception around disability, community, and culture, and then tell the history through that way of seeing the world. Because I think oftentimes history, as it can be presented, can be othering. It's like, now we're going to tell you a little bit about the disability community's history or disability history, as though that's something different. And we wanted to make a film that would make all Americans, like excited about this incredible civil rights story out of our history that we should all hold, and we should all tell our kids, about this story and this movement and what happened. And so I just feel like that's the importance of the arts. That's what art can do that textbooks can't. And yeah, that's why this was such an exciting opportunity.
Thank you both. I love how you both talked about how like every culture needs to know its history, and I feel like representation in media is a huge part of that. And so, the Rudderman Family Foundation came out with a white paper on this back in 2016 on authentic representation, showing that fewer than 2% of characters in TV have disabilities. And then the follow-up study in 2018 showed that there was some progress, but then the rate of disabled characters on TV being portrayed by actually disabled actors is still really low at just 21%. And so what are your thoughts on the state of representation in the media for people with disabilities, and how can the arts as a field support that change?
I think that if we look at any other group that perhaps has been underrepresented in the past, and we see what has been successful for those people, you can apply that directly to people with disabilities. And so that means that things like networking events or apprenticeships or training programs need to be accessible. And I think, one of the source points for many people for people in the disabled community is to see a non-disabled person playing a role of somebody with a disability. But the issue comes down to box office draw, and until the entertainment industry really looks at making sure that performers get their opportunities to work their way up and build their fan base, we're going to be stuck with this for a long time. And it's not like those actors don't exist. There's many performers that do exist that have the talent and the chops to do something like this, but they're simply just not as well known. It's time for that to change.
Yeah, absolutely. Nicole, I didn't know if you had anything else to add to that. Wanted to give you a chance, but also fine if not.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I mean, I think it's been really eye-opening for me to follow the process of producing and making this film with Jim. So we're a disabled and a non-disabled co-directing team, and just to experience for myself all of the access barriers and sort of assumptions that people are kind of thrown up in Jim's way and not mine. And what that gave us the opportunity to do as a team is to try to just like knock those down as we went forward. Whether it was something like we try to go to a networking opportunity and pitch the project, but it's up 3 flights of stairs and Jim can't get into it. Or it's something like, we need to fly a long distance and the ADA doesn't include, access to bathrooms on airplanes. And that's something Jim has to deal with. And it's just like, it's like this kind of constant thing. And so I really feel like that's why projects like ours are so important. I also feel like there's such the kind of stigma that we were trying to break down through the film in some small way is this one where non-disabled people often feel like there's something kind of like they're afraid they're going to say the wrong thing. They're afraid to approach people. They're afraid to get into it. They're afraid it's going to be difficult. And so one of the things we really wanted the film to show is like, that's not true, and I think it's the film, but it's also just the experience that everybody's having, of working with us and our team, which includes other people with disabilities, you know, as we move forward through the process. So it's actually, I mean, it's both been frustrating and sobering, like how far we have to go, but also really exciting to just feel like the upswell of talent, especially in this generation, and just to feel how poised we are, I think, for like a really incredible renaissance, you know, as people get these opportunities, I hope, in the future.
I love that so much. And it definitely sounds like this documentary was such a labor of love, a collaborative effort. And what was your reaction when you saw the finished film for the first time, when everything, the final cut, what was kind of going through your mind at that moment? Question for both of you. Sorry.
I assume that's for you, Jim. You start, because it was your story.
Okay, I just the first time we really saw it with an audience was opening night at Sundance, and we were and it was just a remarkable experience in that purely as you know, filmmakers, kind of feeling the audience and getting a sense of how they were engaged, and starting to hear laughs show up and realize that people are getting it, and that the engagement and emotional response from the audience was palatable throughout the whole film, down to tears at the end. So that was just, you know, it's one of those things you kind of go, but also, you know, getting it, you know, we had a wonderful funder that helped to pay for a lot of the people that were in the film to come out to Sundance. And so we had just about everybody that was in the film on stage with us at the end for the Q&A. And it was just this kind of moment that, you know, you really on stage at opening night at Sundance, and to see us represented in such a way, and the response from the audience was very, very effusive and very warm and stunning. And I don't know how you beat that. I don't think you need to beat that. But it was, and it's just continued since then, regarding to getting a sense of the impact of the film.
Yeah, Judy Heumann sent us the most beautiful text the morning after that premiere. And she said, "I hope you're enjoying walking through the seas of people whom you have awakened," which still makes me cry when I think about it. Cause like, what a thing to have done, but that's kind of what it felt like walking through Park City with, you know, Neil and Denise Jacobson, who are featured in the film, and them being treated like celebrities, you know. And our editor went to get a sandwich, and the woman saw Crip Camp on his name tag, and she said, "You worked on Crip Camp?" And he said, "Yeah." And she burst into tears behind the deli counter, you know, just because she was so emotionally overwhelmed. And so it felt to me like like sort of a wall had been breached or something, you know, like the story really, really, really had needed to be told, and people were ready to receive it. And there was this really incredible moment where on that stage opening night, where we kind of felt like this, you know, overwhelming, resounding question in everybody's minds was like, why haven't I heard this story? Why haven't I heard this story? And Judy, who's kind of a take no prisoners person, as you know, if you've seen the film, said, well, this is a room full of media makers, and this is like a bunch of progressive people, and you're all, you know, highly educated. And so my question for you is, why don't you know this story? You know, I think maybe you didn't want to see it. So I don't know, that was just, it felt historic. It felt like sort of this story out of history kind of confronting this particular moment in time that we're in right now. And that was very powerful. And of course we had no idea what was about to come, you know, with the pandemic and the social movements that are uprising right now and all of that. And as all of that keeps happening, we just keep being more and more aware of the importance of the story, you know, in our current time.
Thank you. I just got chills kind of listening to you both talk about like describing the audience reaction, and it definitely has felt like the disability rights movement has continued to culminate into these like big moments, which is really great to see. And I know it was very validating for me as a disabled person to see the film, and I've spoken with so many people who feel the same way, and it's so clear that it was just so needed. What was the most rewarding part of making the documentary, and also the most challenging, if there were any?
Nicole, you want to start that off, or
No, go
can
ahead.
I jump in? Okay. I just, I'm not shy. Just I think the most rewarding thing about the film itself is just the community that is kind of sprouted up around it, and the feedback we've been getting. Everything from hearing about kind of politicians after seeing the film deciding that they need to take a second look at the like transportation in their county and really what they're doing, to someone who said wrote on Facebook that he finally feels knowable, which to me is just, I don't think I'm going to carry that one with me for the rest of my life, just as being, well, if there's a purpose to what we've done, okay, for this person, it was pretty amazing. Every film has its challenges, and I don't think that on some levels it's just the kind of the nature of making a documentary. I think one of the larger challenges was like what my voice and character would be in this film, and we kind of started out with me being kind of more of a guide, and I became more of a character, which really made a huge difference. But I don't know, Nicole, what would you add to that?
Well, in terms of the reward, I really agree with you. I don't think there's anything better than hearing, especially about a young person, finds their way to disability community and culture, and through the story, as well as feels transformed by their pride in the past, like that. There's that, you can't top that. But I also do feel like, especially just this last week, actually, I felt this other really wonderful thing, which was that I feel the story of the disability rights movement, or the story of the ADA and how it came to be, is more being seen as a movement story, and as a story of powerful young people who refused to take no and got out in the streets and did the really hard work to make change happen, and I don't know that had been broadly known as that before, which is, of course it always was that, but I don't know that that's how people told themselves that story before to the extent that they have. And that's not just the film, it's like actually it's like folks like you and like all these people who are kind of telling the story in that way. But that feels really rewarding. And then in terms of challenge, I think the thing that made me kind of the most frustrated was just the state of a lot of the archival material that we were trying to work with, how poorly it had been archived, how it had been neglected by libraries that hadn't bothered to itemize it, the extent of the kind of time and energy and resource that we had to bring to the table. And thankfully that like Netflix and Higher Ground, the Obama's production company, were supporting us to be able to, have researchers and get told like, well, it might take a year for us to get a contract with somebody who could copy that tape that's never been, or go in the box and actually see what's in it for you. And then us having the ability to say, okay, we're going to push on that. We're going to bring resources to the table, and we're not going to take no for an answer. And, we're going to get that material and then, really painstakingly craft it together. I just feel so fortunate that we were able to do that. But I also feel like for me, it was like a really, surprising look at how, I guess, just sort of like literally how when people are marginalized, how it's hard to hold on to your history, and it's hard to hold on to those things that that can tell that story. So I hope that there's like a lot of resource and energy and philanthropy that can go into trying to make sure that the disability history that's happening right now, for instance, is captured and recorded and archived and everything, because you just really don't want to see these stories lost to history.
Absolutely. And thank you for that. Thank you for kind of explaining what working with the footage was like. It's really cool to hear, to get that inside look, and to just even how to get that material in the first place. I think that's so interesting. And it's so clear just that how much this documentary has done for the disability community, even just by existing, and you both having created it and making it accessible to so many people who love it now, including myself. And so we talked a little bit about this earlier, but more broadly, what do you feel like is the role of the arts in supporting disability justice? And what advice would you have for major arts institutions like the Lincoln Center to support that vision? It's kind of a two-parter.
There are just incredible artists and, dancers and dance companies and visual artists. And that if there has not been a really appreciation for the extraordinary talent that lives within our community, then I think it's the responsibility of organizations to really look at why they think that. And then how can they address really this omission, if there is one within their organization. Every time that somebody with a disability, their artwork is attended to by an audience member or viewed in a museum or read in a book, it can change perceptions of what people with disabilities, who we really are. And I think that was there was kind of a goal with Crip Camp to really try to change the how people without disabilities and with disabilities felt about having a disability. And that if more people self-identified and came together as community, that's possibly a very important political power. And that really the issues that we really suffer for are well beyond ramps or braille or interpreters, but it's stigma. It's a lack of opportunities. It's the high unemployment that we experience isn't because so many of us are incapable of working, is that people don't want to hire us. See what I'm trying to say? It's like, come into my culture, sit down with me, and experience that, and you come out with a much more vivid and fuller experience.
Yeah, it's interesting. Even in our own little organization of Crip Camp, we went through a process that I think is kind of a lesson for other organizations, and that is around disability justice, which is, disability justice being a movement that evolved fairly recently in the 2000s, sort of saying that people with multiply marginalized people within the disability community, their voices, their stories, their leadership wasn't being centered, and making an effort to do that. And when we thought about the impact we wanted the film to make in the world, we thought that we really wanted to not leave people kind of thinking that our unique goal was to lionize this story out of the past, but to connect the story and the leaders of the past to the people who are doing powerful work today, especially in the disability justice movement. And so we had this sort of traditional film impact campaign structure that we were setting up, and we raised some money to be able to implement programming. And then we sort of realized, like, actually what we should do is just give that money and the platforms that we have with Netflix, thankfully, and the film, and basically give that to leaders in the disability justice movement and say, what do you need and what do you want and what stories do you want to tell and how can you use this film best? And so we were able to hire a couple of leaders from the disability justice movement, Stacey Park Milburn and Andrea Levant, to design the work. And it was just like, it was so powerful. So I guess that would be my main piece of advice is just like, people just need the resources. They know what they want to do and they know what they need to achieve. And the, these were people who were wrangling incredible, movements. And when PG&E shut off power in California, they were like connecting people to backup ventilators and things, and just doing incredible, innovative work. And so I feel like the movement is ready to come into these, and people are ready to come into these spaces and just do incredible things. They just need to, be in the room and have access to the resources.
Awesome. We have 1 more minute before we'll transition to audience Q&A. So to just close out, wanted to see if there's one thing or one message you hope that someone who watches Crip Camp comes away with. What would it be? And or if there was anything else that you wanted to add to the discussion around the ADA or disability rights in general.
Personally, I want people to talk to each other. I want disabled people to be talking to other disabled people about their feelings and what this brings up for them. I want non-disabled people to talking with their friends and sharing their emotions. There is no shame in saying that my perception of a group of people changed radically after seeing a film, if that's your experience. What it says is that not only has your mind been changed, but you want to do something proactive about it. You want to share your experience. And you see value in the film that Nicole and I made towards really elevating people with disabilities as members of our society and diminishing stigma.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I hope people see disability as just like a part of the human experience, and really one that we pretty much all of us are going to experience and deal with in the course of our life. And I hope that people take away from the film, some optimism and some belief in our ability to create a world in which we can all thrive. I think for me, the most, probably the most powerful lesson in the film is the way in which you see the disability community and movement succeed because of kind of radical empathy, patience, listening. Those attributes of the community were really the things that made the difference and made these hard-won fights successful. And so I think that's just so important for us, especially right now.
I think that's a great note to end on with the moderated section. Thank you both so much, Nicole and Jim, for your insights and perspectives. This has been such a pleasure. So we're going to be transitioning now to audience Q&A. We've gotten some great questions so far. If you are in the audience and want to ask the question directly, feel free to raise your hand in Zoom to ask the question. And if you do raise your hand to ask, just letting you know you would appear on video. Otherwise, I will be reading the questions off. And I'll keep an eye on the attendees to make sure we don't miss anyone. So the first question that we got is from Jennifer. Jennifer asks, could Jim and Nicole talk about the People Video Theater's footage? One, does Jim remember meeting this film collective and how the footage was captured in the 1970s? For example, did they teach the kids how to use the camera? And two, how much footage was originally recorded and how much was ultimately included in Crip Camp? And then three, what was Jim's experience watching this footage again decades later, which I think we kind of touched on, but if there was anything else you wanted to add to that, Jim, feel free.
Well, I did remember these people showing up at camp. And really one of the few things I remember was that that the name of this group had the word people in it. But I also remember that they strapped one of their tape deck to the handlebars of my wheelchair and then handed me a camera, and somebody pushed me around camp as I was holding the camera to do a tour of the place. They showed up to when they came to the camp. I know, especially by looking at the footage, which helps me to remember a ton of stuff, that they came to kind of our camera drama club. And I'm looking at that footage, I think that a few of the other campers were holding the camera for that footage that we see there. They had 5.5 hours worth of video footage that they shot over the course of a little bit less than a week at Captioning in 1971. And those reels, because they were reels of tape, apparently moved 17 times over the course of 45 years, with Ben Levine, who was one of the members, who was holding on to all that stuff. The fact that it was available, and Nicole had to track down the People's Video Theater and doggedly was able to make a connection.
What about how you felt when you saw it again?
Okay. I can only hold in a couple of questions at a time. It was incredibly bittersweet. It was exciting to look at all of this after so long. And I think to see myself and my friends from, at the time, it was about 45 years earlier, was this incredible trip back in time, as if I was going back, looking through a telescope or back in time. And there were people there I really, really missed that I was seeing. And with every reel we would see, there were gems and nuggets there that just either made me laugh or cry. I just never wanted the footage to end, but it was 5.5 hours. And so I think I kind of feel fortunate. I feel like I went back to camp by working on this film and looking at that footage and experiencing it all over again.
I think, my favorite scene in their footage and in the whole film really is the scene where campers are sitting around and Jim's, leading this discussion about parents and experience of parents, and they talk about privacy. And I love it on many different levels. I love the conversation, the moment with Nancy Rosenblum speaking and everyone's patience to give her a chance to talk, and the ways, Steve Hoffman, then who also has CP, translates for her. It's just also amazing cinematically, and it really shows how a community has grown. But also as a documentary filmmaker, I'm so amazed and impressed by how embedded Howard and Ben of the People's Video Theater are in that moment, and how patient Howard is with letting Nancy say everything she wants to say, and then he tries to find a translation, but he does it in this really gentle, unobtrusive manner. And we know from looking at the footage and seeing this kind of like really cool staff meeting scene that isn't in the film, that there was this whole debate raging among the camp staff about like the boob tube, and was it going to be a bad influence, and should they let the cameras and the filmmakers into the camp. And Larry, the camp director, was like, no man, I don't think it's dangerous. I think it's actually good, because the kids are going to be able to see themselves and then kind of see their own community, and we can use it as kind of an empowerment tool. So the kind of ethics and perspective that the People's Video Theater was working in was so aligned with how we wanted to approach telling the story and making the film. And they were so gracious to us when we finally did, track them down and say, can we use this footage in our documentary? We used about, I think, 35 minutes or something like that of the film is their footage. And they were just like completely 100% supportive of what we were trying to do. And they were on the stage with us at opening night at Sundance. And it kind of just felt like this really amazing collaboration across time. And I feel like, they were working in the best tradition of what we do when we make documentaries. And it was something we kind of wanted to honor, in a way through the way we told the story too.
Absolutely. Thank you. And then Charlotte asks, I was so struck by the way that the film showed how the disability rights community achieved success by refusing to be split into factions, and by being truly inclusive and intersectional in the way that they organized. This stands in such a contrast to, for example, the women's suffrage movement, which celebrates 100 years this summer. What do you think other movements and organizers can learn from disabled organizers?
I'm not a scholar here, but what from talking to Judy and doing a lot of the research on our film, it was really a time in which, that there were a bunch of different factions within the community that were basically looking out for themselves, the blind or visually impaired or the deaf or such. So it really was the power of coming together as a coalition that was so strong. I think that any movement, any organization, every movement, any club wants to take a look at who's not at the table, and that they can learn this lesson, that it is their diversity and their breadth of knowledge within their community and breadth of experience that makes them better and stronger. And so, yeah, I mean, I just think it's a kind of a universal lesson on how to really push forward, is that you don't want to be siloed. You don't want to be necessarily separated from your allies, and that you need to look upon people. You have to make it a two-way street of engaging with people who are involved in social justice movements. We showed up for the other movements back in the day, and folks came and showed up for us. And these are just lessons that we need to reinforce, or at least, I think some people understand this. I just think that it's a very important lesson to be reinforced.
Yeah, I would say that the thing that stuck out the most to me as really incredible was that kind of wisdom that Corbett O'Toole shares in the film of like, I don't like, your disability is different than mine, then I don't know what it's like to be you. So when you tell me what you need or what you're after or your perspective, like I'm gonna trust you. I'm gonna see you and I'm gonna believe you. And I feel like that is the kind of thing that doesn't happen in movements that are not inclusive, and that and those are weaker movements, so we really tried in constructing the film to showcase that, just exactly what you said, because we felt like it would be a really powerful lesson for today. And it's something that I think the disability movement is like one of the best historical examples of it, because disability is in every other community, so yeah, it's incredible to see that.
we've seen some comments about the film that saying things like, if you want to see proof that one person can make a difference, or a small group of people can make a difference, you don't have to look any further than Crip Camp. And that for some people looking at what happened inside the building for the 26-day takeover of the building is not a bad blueprint on how to be successful.
Awesome. I see one person has raised their hand, and then might have time for maybe one or two short questions. Want to get to as many people as we can, but I know we're also running out of time. So the person who has their hand raised, do you want to go ahead? I think you just unmuted yourself.
Oh, sure. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm Suzanne from Philadelphia, and I loved Crip Camp. I was like just maybe a couple of years too young to be involved, and I remember hearing about it and, hearing about everything that was happening in Berkeley and hearing about everything that was happening that you guys did, and it was so exciting to me. And I think that's great. Now, how many years later, we still seem to be fighting a lot of the same battles. And so where do we go from here? I think that, we're not finished yet. And I think that it's so easy for some people to think, oh, okay, now you all have gotten the ADA, so everything should be fine and wonderful. And so, but it's not finished. The story is not finished, and we're still continuing daily. And I hope that people will, you younger people will continue the rallying cry and complete the work that people have tried to do over the last, over the last long time. And I just thank you all for putting together Crip Camp. I am telling everyone to look at it. And the only other question that I have is there a version on YouTube that has audio description? Because the Netflix version has audio description. And then I tried looking at the one on YouTube, and the version that I found did not have audio description. So I'm wondering if that has been addressed.
There's been indeed you found, there are two versions on YouTube at the moment. And one of them has open captions and audio description.
Oh, good.
So dig a little deeper on that, and hopefully you'll find it. I've almost forgotten what the other kind of part of the question was here. I apologize.
It's all right.
Oh, no, I think you asked about the kind of, the younger generation and stuff. And I think that as somebody from a young person in the old generation, I think that what was really one of the biggest eye-openers to me was when I started getting to know people like Stacey Park Milburn and other people involved in disability justice. And that as I started talking with them and reading and such, that to me, this generation feels like there's a lot in common with the generation that you saw in our film. And that it's very important that we pass the mic, and that if you're not that familiar with disability justice movement, that it's imperative upon all of us to really dig in and learn more and listen to the people that are involved in that movement. And I think that cross-generationally, just that the conversations, need to happen so that we can be supportive and folks can learn from us and that we can learn from them. And as elders in our community, we can also be able to talk about the work that they are involved with, which is vital and necessary for our movement to continue.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And then our last question, is from Jason. He's going to wrap us up, and I think it's a good one to end on. And he says, such a brilliant and important film. What are you guys working on now?
Well, we keep getting asked that question, and speaking for myself, I'm so still steeped in Crip Camp. Like we've been working really hard since the film came out in January and through, shelter in place and all of that to get the film out in the world. But we are having a lot of fun kind of exploring and having some discussions around what kind of shape Crip Camp might take in sort of the narrative or scripted realm. And then, just exploring other ideas. But I think that this will be a very tough act to follow. It's not every day you find a film, a subject that's so cinematic and fun and entertaining and so important. So yeah, still living heavily in the world of Crip Camp myself right now.
I'm certainly interested in trying to help support other filmmakers and other stories around disability and looking at how I can kind of take what I've learned and what I know and the people I know to try to, help, kind of bring, help other filmmakers make their films. And I would love to do something in comedy someday, to be honest with you. So anyway.
Awesome. I guess there you have it. Thank you so much, Nicole and Jim, for being here with us. Thank you to Lincoln Center, to Netflix, and everyone here for being a part of this tonight. This has been awesome. And yeah, I guess we can wrap up. I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much. It was great to talk to you.
It was really wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lincoln Center.